how you started, how you came into data field, and what inspired you to start this.
I've been in this space for 30 years now. So I started out in biotech.
I got to hear from one of my clients, lot of things are happening. If we need reports, we need data, we have to ask a request to get the data.
It can be 6 months to get just a basic piece of information.
You mentioned that you have helped finance teams accessing the data. So, some of the brilliant testimonials you want to share.
This is not a finance specific, a manufacturing specific, a technology specific domain, right? Every different type of group within those customers has a valid reason for needing to pull information together.
So, welcome to the Executive Outlook. Today, we are pleased to feature Herman, co founder and CEO of Exponent. At a time when the world is overflowing with data, he is on a mission to make the data secure, shareable, and easy to explore. Herman, we're excited to have you here. Welcome to the Executive Outlook. I'm very excited to hear your journey. So, can you please share how, from how you started, how you came into data field, and what inspired you to start this?
So I've been in this space for 30 years now. So I started out in biotech, responsible for data platforms and working with end users. Went from there to consulting, from there to a fixed income exchange in New York, where I was a product manager and also responsible for, again, all reporting platforms, internal and external, for all the transactions that were occurring on that platform. And then back out to the consulting world, working with hedge funds in particular on their data platforms and helping them to expose information from those platforms and even creating data warehouses specifically for that industry. And during those journeys, what we sort of really came to recognize long before data was a practice, that the biggest trouble that we had with technology programs and builds of software applications always ended up being the data involved at the end stages, right? So it was the cleanliness of the data, the hygiene. It was the sheer volume of data and the ability to move it and to store it and to access it in a timely manner. It was the security around that data. And so all of those problems ended up being the things that always would derail, basic technology builds. So with Exponent, what we set out to do is we really set out to solve some of these problems that people had seen and that we had personally seen over decades, and make data more accessible for end users. And that mission has really morphed into becoming a conduit between modern data platforms and traditional users and processes. And we've gone about doing this in a couple of different ways. And we've introduced a couple of different technology stacks to the market. But the one that has really caught on the most has been an adapter technology that brings data within the Databricks data intelligence platform down to end users directly in Excel, which is where they spend most of their time. So that's really sort of the journey and the arc of my career and what's led us to this place. And what we're really seeing sort of that journey sort of maps to an overall evolution of this data field as well, right? So early on, we had just basic operational relational databases, and those grew in scale and performance. And then we started moving into having those operational data stores as well as denormalized reporting databases. And then we moved into having warehouses and cubes. And then we moved to where we are today, which was sort of into this data lake and now data lakehouse paradigm. And the thing that I worry about in this transition, this progression, is that non-technical users are being left further and further behind. And it's getting harder and harder for them to have access to information. So that's really the biggest thing that we see as a dynamic. So it's how do we bring information back into the hands of those people that need it? And there are a couple of different ways that this happens, right? So, there's an entire business intelligence industry that's grown up, right, in modern times to address this issue and to provide visualizations and dashboards for senior managers and for decision makers to look at their data on a global scale and look and find trends and find problems, identify issues, and correct them in flow and make predictions to the future. And that's where now sort of in the AI world and the ML world, those not just finding trends, but projecting those trends and figuring out what the future holds and helping us to make decisions comes into play as well. But there's also times when we really just need to get at the underlying raw data itself. And so think about those different types of business users that exist. There's the ones that have to make that decision, and do I produce 15% more widgets in the next quarter, or stay equal or drop down? And that's going to be a bit of that data science and machine learning that these platforms are being tuned for. But then there are also operations teams, finance teams, marketing teams that need to just look at okay, what were my sales in this region for this segment, for this salesperson, for this widget, and give me that in raw detail. And that set of basic use cases, truly, I mean, the most basic of use cases is often overlooked when we're building out today's modern platforms, right? So we spend a lot of time in the Databricks world now. We spend a lot of time thinking about what is my data ingestion going to be? What's my migration from my other platforms? What's my what's my series of medallioning and transformations that I'm going to do to address very specific data science and AI use cases, right? And we're very focused as technologists on addressing those use cases, but we're forgetting, wait, there was this entire denormalized reporting warehouse that was sitting here specifically to make life easy for users. And that's getting lost in the shuffle. So what we're doing now is we're saying, no, we still need to give users that end data. And there's only one way to give there's only one way to give those end users their data in a fashion that they are going to work with and understand. And that's in Excel. And that's been borne out over the past 30 years. For 30 years, we've been trying. And forgive me, I'm rambling on and I'm sort of jumping through topics, but I'm happy to.
The story, okay. And you are sharing your 30 years of how the technology is changing in your experience, and that is exactly it is. You mentioned, and I'm enjoying your story. Please continue.
Perfect. For 30 years, we've been basically trying to get users to migrate out of Excel. And I remember in the 90s, we were working on trying to get people to stop using Excel to look at their data. And instead, we're going to look at it in reports that are generated and standardized. And that way we know that there's one sort of true, one truth. And we say, okay, great. And that's the sort of the origins of crystal reports and business objects, right? And they came along and said, we're going to make it easy for end users so that they can get out of that Excel platform. They can get out of their spreadsheet. We're going to make it easy, and we're going to give them a WYSIWYG, designer interface. What you see is what you get. So they can just move little objects around on the screen and boom, they have what they need. So simple. Anyone can do it. And it never worked. You never got your end users to actually use that platform. And then fast forward, to the last decade, 15 years, we have all of these BI platforms, business intelligence platforms, Tableau, Power BI. There's 24 of them. And they all came in and said, we're going to make it easy for users to get to data. And the running joke became that as soon as a firm would decide to bring in Tableau as a piece of software, their immediate next thing was to hire a half dozen Tableau designers, because none of their users would ever become
Although
power
that
users.
is a service portals, those are all self-service portals. This is how they.
They're supposed to, exactly. They're supposed to be self-service portals, and yet every time I need a different dimension or a different attribute or a different filter, it's a request in through ServiceNow with a help ticket through Jira to a developer that has to then make another report. And all of a sudden, for a single, I end up with an explosion of report presentations because no one even can do sort of those basic little things self-service on their own. And then they say, okay, great. Well, we'll just overlay it with AI, which is the next thing that they're doing now, which actually might be a good solution for some end users. But even in that BI space, and Tableau's doing it well right now, honestly, it has to be designed and parameterized by developers for the end user. So fast forward it out. So now we have Databricks, right? So here's Databricks, and Databricks is saying, we're going to be data and AI democratization for everyone. We're bringing data to the world. And how are they doing that? They're taking their Databricks workspace, which is a developer. I mean, this is very much a developer workspace, right? So, I've worked in technology for 30 years, and I open up that and I can write the most complex SQL statements with the best of them, and I can follow through code, even though I'm not a developer. But I get into that workspace and I'm intimidated. The average person will never set foot in that workspace. And yet what they're doing is they're putting an AI overlay onto their SQL editor and saying, oh, just type into the SQL editor. It'll generate the code for you and it'll show you a pretty graph. And now we're giving data to the world. No, they're not. They're not giving data to the world. So that's what we're doing.
Platform which is good. You can write one piece of code, and for developers, I would say yes, it is useful because you can write one code in SQL, the other code in maybe Python, other code in other language. That gives you a lot of flexibility.
For developers, for data scientists, it is a platform that is without rival. It is fantastic. But don't fool yourself into thinking that you're democratizing data for everyone. In order to do that, you have to bring the data into Excel. So that's what we do. Our add-in is literally, it's like no, nothing else. They will not migrate. So again, right? I mean, just think about the number of users on these different platforms. You have, Tableau has, 1 million users. Power BI has 5 million users. Databricks has 10,000 client organizations, 80,000, 100,000 users. There are 1.2 billion Excel users, right? That's where you have to bring the data. So that's what we do. It's one click. I'm inside of Excel. I'm not asking you to learn anything else because 30 years of experience tells me you're not going to. That's just sort of how users behave. But if I put it in front of them and say, here, click on this, just click on this filter button that you know how to do, click import, you can bring down millions of rows of data. And that's what we've done. That's what's caught on with audiences and with different segments of users in enterprises.
Yeah, sure. That definitely, I mean, this is exactly the scenario, right? Which I got to hear from one of my clients. Hey, lot of things are happening. For example, if we need reports, right? We need data. We have to raise a request to get the data, and then they give us the data in Excel format, and if they want to edit it, the users are editing it, and then there is a demo report which is uploading that data back into the systems, and it's a long process. And for those change in between, coordination, it didn't work well, then everything is lost, right? So this was
and it's even worse than you're making out, right? So there are many enterprises where, if we think about the Databricks data journey, right, within the platform, from ingestion through their medallioning. And their medallioning step is typically a 3-stage process. There are enterprises where each of those transformation stages is owned by different technical groups. So getting a simple change, or saying, hey, I need an additional attribute of this information to be available for me, can take months. It can be 6 months to get just a basic piece of information about my sales or about my trades or whatever my industry is, into that presentation.
So, but one of the questions which I want to ask is, lot of people are scared that, hey, I don't want to export my data because of the security perspectives. There are some complaints that it should not be lost somewhere, like HIPAA complaints and data protection laws and other areas. So how do you handle that?
It's the same question that's been truly coming up. It's the same thing that's been coming up for decades. It's the same reason that back in the 90s, enterprises were trying to push users out of Excel. Oh, we can't move this out of our secure database. We can't move this into a presentation where people can access and then move it around freely. And the answer is, you have to, then and now, that you need to have the right security and the right framework around who has access to what information, and the right policies in place for how they use that information. That doesn't change, right? But what we can't do is we can't say, oh, there's a data security concern, and therefore I'm not going to let this group do their jobs, right? That we can't do. We can't tell an operations group, you can't have information about the operations because of security. No, they need that information, and they need to be able to do their own ad hoc information work about it. The finance team, same story. They need to get access to that information, and if they need the details of that, they're going to get that data into Excel one way or another, right? They're going to take that data and they're going to copy and paste it, and they're going to stick it into Excel, and it's going to be a long, drawn out process where they stitch together a whole lot of information, and that process is going to be very error prone. Or you can say, no, you are permissioned for this set of information. Here you go. And I'm going to let you do your job. It's a trade. There's always that security trade-off, right? I can take my information, I can store it away, and I can make it inaccessible, or I can provide the right access for the right groups to the right information so that my business can flourish.
Absolutely, I got it. So tell me some of the use cases which you have handled. Like, I got it. You mentioned that you have helped finance teams accessing the data. So some of the brilliant, you can say, testimonials you want to share by utilizing your platform.
Yeah. So the thing about data is that it's ubiquitous, and the challenges with data cut across every vertical, right? This is not a finance specific, a manufacturing specific, a technology specific domain, right? So every different type of customer and every different type of group within those customers has a valid reason for needing to pull information together. So yes, we work with finance, we work with banks, right? So of course, within those environments, it's the finance groups, the client services teams that need access to underlying details, right? So a client services representative can get a phone call at any point in time from a massive firm saying, I need every transaction that I have made in the past 7 years because I'm being audited, or whatever the case might be. And I need to prove that my record's the same as yours, type of thing. Well, that could be literally hundreds of millions of rows of data, right? That I need, that user now needs to say, okay, I can take this and I can download this directly into a spreadsheet or into a CSV for you. And there they go. We work with, a major regional energy company, right? That provides the electricity for the northeastern portion of the United States. right? And they're using this data in not only their finance teams, but also their operations teams. And they're checking through various different individual pieces of their delivery, of their electric delivery channel, and finding abnormalities and pulling information specific about those, right, directly down into Excel, where they do their further little bit of analysis. So it's energy. It's we're working with, sort of medical research and chemical firms, right? And they're pulling information about the quality of the chemical extractions that they're seeing in each of their batches, and they're ensuring quality control on that, and they're checking for abnormalities, again, using both BI and Excel, right? So it's sort of another thing, right? We don't view Excel as the end all be all, right? Certainly not. In fact, I was one of those back in the decades ago. I was one of those people trying to help migrate users out of Excel because of all of the things that we all understand that are problems with Excel. But it doesn't work. It has its place, it has its uses, but it's not the end all be all. So where I can have other tools, where I can have Tableau presentations, I should. Where I can have monitoring consoles, I should. So it's a matter of being complements in solutions for all of these companies.
For specifically for non-tech users, it is very difficult to explore and understand the reports also. And then there's new things that is coming. I don't know if you have heard of no. Typically it's SaaS, right? Software as a service.
Yeah.
Now it is coming as generative AI on the top of BI. Yeah.
Sure. And that's great if those BI platforms have the reports that are designed and the governance around them, and that requires a lot of technical work, like we've discussed. And so yes, use those, and then the complement is Excel. That's our finding, that's our journey, right? It's if you want to democratize data, you have to put it in front of users, and Excel's not going anywhere. So that's there's it's the three constants in life, right? Taxes, death, and Excel. We're not getting rid of any of those things anytime. So embrace that, understand your users, understand their challenges, and provide them with the right tools for the right times.
So my last question to you is the people who are into the data space, all right? So they are currently in a process of setting up the systems. So what do you recommend from the technology stack perspective that
Yeah, the biggest problem that we've experienced is that in setting up these modern data platforms, we are taking a very, very heavy technology focus. We're very focused on AI use cases. We're very focused on data science use cases, on machine learning use cases. And we're forgetting about those basic use cases that have driven the reason that we have these denormalized reporting databases. And we need to not forget about them in the journey. So when we raced to do our data ingestion, and then we race to work to tick off use case after use case after use case, but they're all forward looking to how do I bring Gen AI into this piece of the organization? How do I do this piece of predictive analytics with machine learning? And that's where all of the use cases are being centered, and we're forgetting the modern user. So if there was one takeaway, it's don't forget that traditional user when you're building out your use cases. And that's the biggest downfall that I think people are experiencing.
totally agree. Totally agree. So I always recommend, like, whenever people, so again, this is a data space. So data users are this. And then there is a rest of the world who don't know right now, right? So then I tell them, okay, please start utilizing data. So one of the common question people have is, we don't have data. We're a very small company. We don't have data. I said, if you're a small company, start maintaining the KPIs on Excel sheet. Put it manually. That's fine. When you will be you will be bigger and you will be not able to manage time in order to put those information manually. Then start automating it because you know this is a use case. This is what you need, and then start involve technology into this, right? So it's not complex.
Exactly. And in some ways, it's easier for that smaller organization because there's less, there are fewer hurdles in making data accessible. There's fewer requirements around security, and there's fewer groups and organizational hoops to jump through. Right. So again, if there was, they have it for what they have done operationally. That data is sitting in a platform. It's sitting in an accounting system. It's sitting in a sales order system. It's sitting somewhere. And if they've already taken the step of ingesting that into a data lake, then you know what? Yes, you can bring it straight into Excel without problem. And now overlay your KPI, overlay your management, the sort of projections, and work from there. Absolutely.
Exactly. So this is exactly what I like. You don't need a complex systems. You can use it as you know with a limited
Yeah.
technology. Yeah. All right. So I think that is all I have today to ask from you. And I really, really like the discussion. Thank you so much for sharing your wonderful insights.
Isha, you're very welcome. It's been a pleasure.